Welcome back to the Connected Commerce Educational Mini-Series. My name is Rebecca Kalin and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Logicbroker. Today I'm joined by my colleague Craig Regan, who's our Director of Sales. We're going to talk a little bit about successful EDI migration. With today's rapidly changing retail ecosystem, your business must adapt to maintain a competitive edge. As your business grows or restructures, different systems are put in place. Shopping carts, order management, and warehouse management systems typically are updated or upgraded, but your EDI solution for dropship automation is usually neglected once you have built it or partner up with a partner many years ago. You may or may not be aware that your legacy dropship automation is not scaling today. While switching to a new dropship automation and EDI solution seems intimidating, we have outlined the steps to take to make this large undertaking less daunting. Craig, would you like to walk us through some of the challenges that retailers may face while getting ready to migrate off their legacy system?
Definitely. Let's walk you through everything. So I talk to a wide variety of retailers on a daily basis, whether they're looking at Logicbroker, they have a legacy system in place, or they might be a Logicbroker customer already. And here are some key themes that I really hear from them when I'm trying to identify, what are they doing today and how do they want to improve that process. First, a lot of them might be using a legacy order management system or ERP, and they're having a lot of hard time connecting that ERP or order management system to suppliers or EDI. And it's costing them a lot of hours. They might have a lot of resources having to investigate how to fix these problems. Adding new partners takes a long time, and overall it's just a very costly process for them. So they're trying to figure out how can we just simplify this process. The second is, they're looking to accelerate their dropship program. So maybe they have just 100 suppliers now, and they want to scale that to 800, 1,000 suppliers and really broaden their product catalog and invest heavily in dropship. But they don't know how, and they're worried with their current resources and technology that they're not going to be able to do that efficiently and provide that customer experience. Because really, they want that customer experience that Amazon has. Amazon makes it very easy for you to receive an order from a dropship supplier. And if you don't provide that same exact experience, that customer is probably going to go back to them after they order from you. The next is, we have a lot of retailers that are maybe using a third party to manage their dropship program and EDI network, and it's very costly. So the traditional model with these type of platforms is charging a kilo character or per order fee. They charge that to the supplier, and that really doesn't help the supplier do business with you, because every single time they get an order, you're charging them, or your provider's charging them. So they get 1,000 orders that month, they're all happy, but their bill is higher. So overall, providing a better customer experience on the front end is important, but also to your suppliers as well, because if they're incentivized to do and ship their products well to your customers, that helps out everyone. That helps your business, that helps the customers as well. And then lastly, I also hear a lot of people don't know if they have enough resources to maybe add dropship or just manage this type of program. So that's why they're looking at a platform like Logicbroker, because we help provide an extension of that team to manage that entire process for them.
Craig, thank you for walking us through those challenges. Do you think you could maybe share an example of how a retailer kind of tackled those challenges and how a solution helps them overcome them?
Definitely, yeah, and I think that'll be helpful to start off with an example. So I'm thinking of a customer right now called Rural King out in the Midwest, and they have about 102 stores, I think, around there, and they're growing like crazy. They're actually one of the retailers that are adding more stores, investing heavily in brick and mortar, but also in e-commerce. And they recently went through a transformation where they're implementing a new order management system and really investing heavily in technology. And they looked at their dropship program and noticed that there was a big disconnect between their internal systems and their dropship suppliers. So every single order that was going to their dropship suppliers was manual. So they reached out to Logicbroker saying, hey, we have all these suppliers, we're investing heavily into our e-commerce and internal systems. How can we improve this process with our suppliers and provide a better customer experience? Because sometimes they wouldn't get tracking information, sometimes the order would just show up at somebody's house. Nobody wants that. So they implemented Logicbroker, and we reached out to their vendor community. I think they had over 300 suppliers, and we were able to automate the entire dropship process for them. So if a customer places an order online, it automatically gets routed off to the supplier. And they're able to see significant ROI just in growth of their dropship program because it's completely automated. And they have less out-of-stock sales, and just overall just a better customer experience because everything's automated.
Would you mind going into a little bit of a deeper dive about our solution and kind of go over the more technical details?
Definitely, I can get very technical. So let's talk about the platform. Now, the Logicbroker platform, it's all hosted in Microsoft Azure, and it's built from the ground up around our API. So there's a lot of providers out there that have been around for a while, and they're adding an API to their tech stack. And there's a lot of things that go into adding an API to your tech stack around pre-built processes that just don't make it as easy to use. Where Logicbroker, everything we do is built around our API. So we have a web-based portal that gives you a view of all your transactions and everything within our API. Well, everything we add is always to our API first. And that really makes it easy for people to connect to Logicbroker. We have over 100 endpoints in our platform and our API as well. So again, we make it very easy for people to integrate with our platform because it's all built around that API. We also have the ability to support other different formats. So we work with people that maybe they have an ERP that's 15 years old, but they still use it because that's the backbone of their business, and they're processing tens of thousands of orders a day with that ERP, and they run it across the globe. So they can't really migrate to anything new. So we look at what do they have existing? Can they ingest XML, CSV? And we try to find out what is the best method for them, so they just have a one-time integration to Logicbroker. They don't have to manage different custom formats for each integration. So another thing that Logicbroker provides is you can have the best platform in the world, but if you don't have the experience and the people behind it, it's not going to be successful. So here at Logicbroker, we have the people as well that have experience working with, Rite Aid, Rural King, Sears, people that have large dropship networks. So we can help manage that process for them and make sure during that onboarding process with their suppliers, we're doing the right outreach to their suppliers. They understand the process. They understand how easy it is to automate the dropship process and to use Logicbroker. And it just makes it a seamless process, or as seamless as possible for, we try to do it for our customer and for the suppliers as well. Some other highlights, we provide that freedom, I think I mentioned before as well, for the suppliers where they might be used to having per order or transactional fees. They won't have that with Logicbroker. So any supplier working with Logicbroker on behalf of a retailer, they're not paying us anything to receive those orders. We want them to be able to receive and transact as many orders as possible because that makes it easier for them to do business with our customer. We also don't want to penalize them for sending inventory updates. So a lot of other providers, if they're sending inventory updates once a day, twice a day, once a week, they're getting charged every time they send that inventory update. And for the retailer, you want to receive as many inventory updates as possible because you want to know how much stock that supplier has. So the customer doesn't buy something online and it's out of stock. So it's helpful for the retailer to receive that as often as possible, but if the supplier is getting billed for it every single time, they don't want to send it. So they can send an unlimited amount of inventory, even product files to our platform, and they're not charged for it. So again, helping the retailer and helping the suppliers as well. We also provide a lot of visibility in our platform to documents. We make it very easy for people to search for things, so they don't have to search just by like a PO number or an invoice number. If they need to find, what happened to my order for Rebecca Kalin that I shipped out the other day, they can put in Rebecca Kalin and they can find that order history for Rebecca Kalin. So making it very easy to find out what's going on with my orders and what happened, and making it easier for people to troubleshoot things arises.
Great. That is a really good deep dive into our solution. I think a lot of people are going to find this beneficial and
Hopefully.
very valuable content. Why don't we jump into what the integration process actually looks like now that we've given a thorough overview of what the solution is? How do we get started?
Okay, so let's jump into the nitty-gritty. And as I mentioned before, you can have the Logicbroker platform, which is very powerful, but if it's not integrated to an ERP or order management system or a shopping cart, there's no value we provide, because what we do is all about automation. And so figuring out how to get your system connected to Logicbroker is vital, and being able to do it in a one-time format in one way, so you just have to set that up one time and then you can have hundreds of integrations, is very important, because you want to be able to scale this easily. And we like to call this the lift and shift. So we have a technical discussion, and actually business discussion as well, where we'll bring in people from operation, we'll bring people from the technical side, whether that's engineering or IT. We bring everybody into a room. We begin to whiteboard how the process will look like. And we really need to first identify where transactions need to go. So orders, where are they going to come from? Is that going to be coming from an order management system, shopping cart, ERP, tracking information? Where do you need that synced from? Where do you need invoices to go? Where do you need inventory to go? Acknowledgements, lots of other things. And also identifying how can you communicate with Logicbroker. Because we have our API that has 100 plus endpoints, we always prefer let's use our API, because that builds a scalable foundation for now and for the future. But some people, like I mentioned, can't handle integrating with an API, or their platform doesn't have the ability to do that. So we'll look at, okay, can you support CSV? Do you have a standard CSV file that you can export and import from your system? We'll take a look at that, and we'll do a one-time mapping. So all you have to do is post that CSV on an FTP, and we use that same format for all of your vendors. The same when we're pushing it back to you. Whether it's an invoice, tracking, or inventory, it's that same format. We can do the same with XML. We could do the same with EDI. So really identifying what's the best way for the retailer and our customer to communicate with Logicbroker. And we then, after we go through that process of identifying the final mile wiring, or that lift and shift to Logicbroker, we then scope out, how are we going to go through the process of onboarding the suppliers and walking through the steps that we need to go through in testing. So getting making sure purchase orders working, tracking information, invoices, so then we can layer in those suppliers at the right time. We can begin quickly onboarding them.
Let's go back to that discovery session. Let's talk about that a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, so we can go a little bit more depth in that. So essentially, every Logicbroker customer gets a dedicated resource that's worked on Dropship projects before. So they understand the process of getting up and running with the Dropship program. They also understand how an integration needs to happen. So they'll be in part of that discovery session, and they'll review existing specs and documentation during that discovery meeting, and whiteboard and solution design everything. So that's really, getting in the nitty-gritty of looking at that CSV file, looking through that XML file, seeing what fields you have, what fields are required, because a lot of systems might require one field and Logicbroker requires something else. So really mapping that together and making sure everything is going to talk to each other in the right way. Our team will also review that existing order lifecycle in that whiteboarding session, and outlining everything that's necessary to make sure everything is aligned. So making sure those orders are going to the ERP, make sure the invoices are going to ERP, inventory is going to the shopping cart. So yeah, so everybody will collectively look at this design that we created, and we'll get sign off from business people, technical people, to make sure everybody's on the same page so they know how the process is going to work.
All right, so once the discovery phase is completed, what's the next step in the integration process?
Yeah, so the next step after that whiteboarding and discovery session is going a little more into solution design and figuring out how we're going to onboard your suppliers. So one, we walk through that systems configuration and process to your ERP, order management system, or shopping cart. Again, there's a testing process, there's configurations that need to happen between yourself, the retailer, and Logicbroker, and eventually out to your vendors. We decide on the vendor integration formats, and we start putting business rules and processes in place to make sure that data is coming in the right way and how you as the retailer need it. So a lot of systems might have very specific rules for how they want the date to come in, or how they want pricing to come in, or how they want inventory files in. You're receiving all this different data from different suppliers. They might be feeding it all these different ways, but when we push it into your system or we receive it from your system, we can put business rules in place to make sure it's the way that you want it, so there aren't any errors when you're trying to transact data with your ERP. We'll then go through a vendor compliance process. So that's going through, what are the requirements for your suppliers or vendors? Are they all going to be portal? They can be doing EDI, XML, CSV, API, going through the scorecarding that we have in our system, so you can know how well that they're going to be performing to those SLAs, making sure that just everybody's on the same page with, okay, how well and how quickly these vendors need to comply with your dropship standards. And then, we go through the branding and onboarding process. A lot of our retailers will make a branded knowledge base, so their suppliers, they can see specific onboarding and help documentation that are specific to their processes, because every retailer has different and unique processes when it comes around dropship. And then we get together and figure out what is our approach going to be like for those suppliers. And for example, when we're onboarding, 100 or even 1,000 suppliers in some circumstances, there needs to be some type of approach to doing that. So one example is, trying to find a few maybe middle volume suppliers to kind of pilot everything and be those first suppliers to be on it. Also trying to find people that are positive and are successful dropship vendors for you, so they know that they're going to be successful with this process and will give you good feedback. You could also start off with your highest volumes dropship suppliers, try to go for the 80-20 rule. You get 20% of your suppliers that maybe provide 80% of your business, and then you can layer in those other guys. Or, you could also start off with, okay, we have these new dropship suppliers, why don't we start off with them first? There's a number of different ways we can carve it up, and really, that's some of the value that Logicbroker provides, is we've gone through a lot of these different approaches, so we can provide a lot of good feedback on what's going to work, what might not work, and we can all work together on figuring out the best way to get these suppliers up and running quickly. Because that's one thing that Logicbroker provides is, once you were ready to do the onboarding process, we want to do it quickly. We don't want it to take a year to onboard all your suppliers. We want it to take weeks or months to do it all. So we want to do it very quickly. And we put a lot of effort into this process to make sure once we're ready for that, we can hit the ground running and get them using the platform. And you using the platform, because that's when the retailer herself is going to get ROI.
Sounds like a lot goes into the solution overview process. Let's talk a little bit more about the configuration and business rules that you mentioned.
Yeah, so data is being validated is very important to make sure that things are running smoothly from your internal systems and from your suppliers. And one of the values that Logicbroker provides is during this configuration process, and even after we've gone live with your suppliers, is we provide a staging or a sandbox replica for you. So even beginning the implementation stage, you can have a sandbox, you can have a live environment, and it replicates what you have set up in production, and that's live. So you can go in there and you can do testing without impacting anything. So if you need to add a new business rule around inventory, so let's say you only want to receive 90% of inventory files from your suppliers. So you have a little cushion in case, they do send you the wrong inventory amounts. So you can receive in 90% of what they want instead of receiving the full amount. Also putting business rules around time. Maybe you need to receive your files in GMT and you have some suppliers sending it to you Eastern time. These things, when you're looking at a solution, they don't come up, but when you get into the nitty gritty, which happens, you're going to need a tool that can support these unique functions to your internal system. Because if they don't, the data is going to come in and isn't going to look the right way. It isn't going to be scalable for your business. We also run a lot of validation and provide test cases for your vendors, and we'll go into that a little more so you can understand, every step of the process that your suppliers have to go through. They need to make sure that they're validating everything, that they're testing it the right way, and making sure that that data is coming in with any business rules or validation or SKU lookups that we have, that it's all coming in the same way every single time.
Let's walk through what the retailer and their internal system look like. How do we test to make sure that these connections are gonna?
Definitely, yeah. So there's effort that needs to go into that, and I like to say if it was easy, everybody would do it. So once all the configurations are completed, the Logicbroker team will work with the retailer to test all the one-time integration points between their system, as well as some test and vendor endpoints. And again, that can be done via EDI, XML, CSV, or API web portal. This is one of the most crucial parts to ensure that all the configuration, all the validations work before we do a large vendor outreach. We usually experience that our retail customers are excited to notify their vendors right away to share that they have this new powerful dropship automation platform ready for them to use, and it's also probably going to cost less than what they were doing before. However, in order to speed up the onboarding process and make sure we're doing everything one time, not multiple times, we need to make sure that the testing process is done correctly to make sure, again, we can accelerate that once we're ready.
Great. So once we validated the testing process between Logicbroker, retailer, and their internal systems, it sounds like we're ready to move on to the vendor onboarding process.
Yeah, so that's the next step, and there's a number of different ways we can prioritize your vendors and that outreach, but really that's when Logicbroker jumps in and begins to start that onboarding process, and everything we do relies on automation. So there's more speed and help minimize the number of resources required to onboard your suppliers. Once the internal testing is completed, like you mentioned, Logicbroker will automatically send out surveys to your suppliers, designating them to onboard at what part of each phase. So we might have phase 1 vendors, phase 2 vendors, phase 3, depending on how you want to approach it. The vendor survey will guide each of your vendors to select the best integration choice for them. So that can be EDI, it can be XML, CSV, API, or our web portal. Once an integration option is selected, Logicbroker manages that testing process to certify the vendor's readiness. It's a very thorough testing process, which is performed in our staging environment, so your suppliers or vendors aren't going to break anything during this testing process. Also gives them ability to use the platform and get a feel of how everything's going to work once it's live. Once the testing is complete, the integration is promoted to production, and then it's monitored by our operations team. So that dedicated resource and the people that are managing your dropship network, they monitor those suppliers and make sure they're transacting everything the right way. If there's any exceptions, we jump in to handle that for you. Notifications and compliance tools will also be activated to enforce vendors are compliant to your SLAs. So making sure they're shipping out the products in the right time, making sure they're acknowledging them as well, make sure that they're sending inventory files, which is very important for a successful dropship program. Throughout the entire onboarding process, you'll have visibility to which vendors have completed the survey. So you can see, okay, we have these 10 guys are finished it. These 10 guys are only at step 1. We might have 20 in step 3, so you can have an understanding of who's doing what. And this goes throughout, so once you are live, you're still going to probably want to add more vendors. And that testing process is pretty much the same, so you'll be able to see the steps of the process to try to accelerate them, saying, okay, they're only at step 1, let's get to step 5 or 6, see if we can have you start selling product on our site. And as I mentioned before, to accelerate that onboarding process, having flexibility to communicate with as a retailer into Logicbroker is important because, one supplier might not be able to do EDI. They might need to use a web portal. So they don't have any technical folks or any resources to do any type of integration. They just need the easiest way to receive orders from you, and that's over the internet. So we provide a web portal for them. Some might want an integrated option. Maybe they have an EDI solution tied into their QuickBooks or something like that. They can use our EDI specs and have that automated into that QuickBooks format. We have CSV, we have XML files as well. We also offer an API, so that's very similar to what an Amazon would offer up to their suppliers, saying, okay, you want to do business with Amazon, use our API. So a very modern approach to allowing your suppliers to communicate with you. And APIs provide a more real-time and it's a more scalable foundation for communicating information. The supplier portal, that's important, as I mentioned before, because that can allow your suppliers that don't have the technical capability to do EDI or to integrate with an API, they can easily receive orders for you. I have a lot of customers that they're merchandising people like the supplier portal as well, because they might see a cool product on Instagram and they say, oh, I want to sell that on our site. You can reach out to that vendor, and once you have that business agreement, we can light them up in that portal in 24 hours, so they can start selling that product on their website very quickly and very easily. Other formats that are a little more technical and require more effort, but provide complete automation, are providing orders on an FTP, whether that's CSV or XML, to do a lot of bulking and exchange of order information. Again, there's the traditional EDI. EDI is not going anywhere. It's been around for 30 years, I think, and a lot of people still rely on that. So we offer a lot of different formats for EDI so they can easily adhere to our standards, and even some circumstances, Logicbroker can adopt your supplier's standards. So your supplier might be using a standard with 10 other retailers. We could potentially use their format so they don't have to do a lot of effort working with the Logicbroker format. That's a very key thing that we can provide. We're very flexible. I know I'm saying it a lot, but we are really flexible, and that's why people use Logicbroker, because we provide that. And again, we provide that API, so people can have real-time integrations between their systems and Logicbroker. We have webhooks that allow you to pull Logicbroker, so you can pull that information automatically. You don't have to have an AS2 or set up FTPs or anything like that. It's all built on REST, and you can exchange JSON or XML. And lastly, actually, I didn't mention this before, we have our native extensions as well. So ShipStation, for example, it's the most popular shipping platform for e-commerce brands and vendors. They have about 50,000 users, and Logicbroker has a pre-built integration to ShipStation. So if you're a retailer, you might have 200 of your suppliers might use ShipStation. We can pump those orders automatically inside of ShipStation. We also offer the ability to print shipping labels in our portal as well. So you can dictate, okay, what carrier it is, this is the shipment method, and they can print those labels already out of our portal. And then we also offer pre-existing integrations to Zapier, which has about 750 apps, NetSuite, lots of other different platforms. So again, being flexible, making it easy for your suppliers to do business with you.
Craig, thank you so much. I know we covered a ton of information today.
Yeah.
Let's take a minute to walk through the full implementation timeline so that everyone that's watching can just get a nice recap.
You go through this effort one time, and then you have that foundation set. So once you have all the suppliers integrated and you do the testing, you have that foundational effort done, you can begin to easily add new suppliers and benefit from it. But let's walk through the first step is that discovery and finalizing that integration between internal systems and Logicbroker. Again, we'll go through a detailed functional and technical requirements, and that's really a lot of whiteboarding, making sure that data is coming from your systems to the suppliers and going back out into your systems the right way. Then we'll go through, and figure out how are we going to approach onboarding your suppliers and vendors. So mapping out how we're going to do that process. And then we'll do that integration testing between your system and Logicbroker to make sure we have a rock solid integration and that foundational effort's done, so then we can accelerate onboarding your suppliers. Again, Logicbroker doesn't want this to be a year-long process. We want this to be weeks, months process. Then we do the vendor outreach. So that outreach can be done. We have a lot of different methods of doing that. We send an email blast, we do webinars, we create help documentation. Like I said, a lot of our enterprise clients will have a branded knowledge base, so their suppliers are logging into a knowledge base just for them, for their specific business, because each retailer has their own unique requirements for Dropship. We migrate those third-party suppliers, we figure out what method that's going to be, and again, we have EDI, XML, CSV, API, our native connectors, Zapier. There's a lot of different ways your suppliers can work with us. We go through the testing, make sure each supplier is getting up and running. We give you that visibility so you can log in, you can see, okay, this supplier is done testing steps 1, 2, 3, this supplier is done testing steps 1, this supplier is done. So you can monitor that and the progress that's being made and make sure we're hitting that date of when you want to go live. We'll also push out reporting and notifications for yourself and those suppliers so they can make sure they're meeting your SLAs for around shipping orders on time, acknowledging orders on time, sending inventory files as often as you need it. We'll sunset that third-party provider and all those integrations that they have. So strictly everything is done through Logicbroker. And as I mentioned, typically we see integrations take, 1 to 5 months, depending on the number of vendors and how willing they are to onboard with you. Typically, we see suppliers and vendors are very happy to switch to Logicbroker because of the flexibility we provide and the fact that we don't have any per order or transactional fees. They understand how much it's going to cost to work with Logicbroker. They don't have to worry about, oh, I did 1,000 orders this month. I'm going to get charged for that. Or sending inventory files. They're not going to get charged for that, which overall provides a better experience for the customer, the retailer, and the suppliers.
Craig, thank you so much for joining me today.
It was a pleasure.
This was valuable information, some great content. I think everyone learned that our approach to the vendor onboarding process, it relies heavily on automation and speed to really minimize the undertaking. I mean, obviously this is a huge process, but we have a great team behind us and we have wonderful technology, and we really believe that we can take this massive undertaking and make it a lot more comfortable. So you don't have to be worried. We're here to help you through every step of the way. Thanks again for tuning into our Connected Commerce educational mini-series. If you're interested in learning more e-commerce tips and tricks, you can join us in New York City this September 13th. It's going to be the second annual Connected Commerce Conference. You can learn more at connectedcommerce.io, and we look forward to seeing you there in September.